Zohran Mamdani's story doesn't sound like your typical American political journey. He wasn't born in the suburbs, and he didn't come from a political dynasty. He was born in Kampala, Uganda, in 1991, to parents who believed deeply in ideas, in art, and in justice. His father, Zohran Mamdani, was a scholar who studied the power and pain of politics across Africa. His mother, Mira Nair, was a filmmaker who turned human stories into global cinema. Together, they carried with them a belief that knowledge and compassion could change the world. When Zohran was just 7, they moved to New York City, the place that would later make him its mayor. Queens became his classroom. Not the kind with white boards, but the kind with street vendors, crowded buses, and neighbors from every corner of the world. It's where he learned the rhythm of real life in New York, where people work double shifts, share apartments, and dream big even when the odds are small. He saw what it means to belong and what it means to struggle. That mix, pride and pressure, became the foundation of who he was. He studied Afrikaner studies at Bowdoin College, trying to understand how power and history shape people's lives. When he came back to New York after college, he didn't go chasing money or fame. Instead, he became a housing counselor, helping tenants who were being pushed out of their homes. He sat at kitchen tables with families who were scared they'd lose everything, listening to stories the city often ignored. He didn't just see poverty, he saw policy, he saw systems that kept people trapped, and he started asking the same question over and over. If the city works for so many, why can't it work for everyone? That question pushed him into politics. In 2020, Zohran Mamdani decided to run for the New York State Assembly. Most people thought he didn't stand a chance. He was young, broke, and running as a democratic socialist in a city that still worshipped wealth. But he didn't wait for permission. He went door to door, talking to people who had stopped believing politicians cared about them. He talked about rent, about jobs, about the buses that never came on time. He wasn't promising miracles, just a city that respected its people again. And somehow that message cut through the noise. When the results came in, he won. It wasn't just a political win, it was proof that authenticity still mattered. In the state assembly, he kept his word. He fought for tenants, for public transit, for people who were tired of hearing excuses. He stood up for causes that weren't always popular but were deeply human. Fair housing, climate action, health care that actually worked. He became known as one of the few politicians who didn't hide behind slogans. He showed up where the problems were, not in boardrooms, but in the streets. Then came 2024. New York was struggling again. Rising rents, broken transit, deep divisions. People were angry, frustrated, and desperate for change. And in that moment, Zohran made a decision that shocked almost everyone. He announced he was running for mayor of New York City. Some said he was too idealistic, too inexperienced, too bold. But he had something money couldn't buy: connection. His campaign didn't sound like the others. It sounded like the city itself. Messy, emotional, and alive. He talked about freezing rents, making city buses free, expanding child care, and creating a minimum wage people could actually live on. He called out corporate greed, pushed for climate resilience, and demanded that billionaires pay their fair share. The media said it was unrealistic, but for working-class New Yorkers it sounded like hope. Crowds began showing up in every borough, chanting his name, carrying signs that read, "From Queens to City Hall." They weren't just voting for him. They were voting for a city that believed in fairness again. The election came down to November 4th, 2025. His opponent was Andrew Cuomo, a man with power, money, and legacy. But the people had already made their choice. When the final numbers came in, it was official. Zohran Mamdani, 34 years old, was elected the 111th mayor of New York City, the first Muslim, the first South Asian, the first person born in Africa to ever hold that office. It wasn't just a political victory. It was a moment in history. For millions, his win meant more than policy. It meant possibility. For every immigrant kid who grew up hearing they'd never belong, his victory said otherwise. For every working-class family that felt invisible, it said, someone finally sees you. And for a city that's constantly reinventing itself, it said, New York still knows how to dream. But Zohran himself stayed grounded. In his first speech, he said, "This isn't my story alone. It's ours, every person who believed that this city could still live up to its promise." That sentence captured his entire philosophy. Politics, for him, wasn't about winning power. It was about returning it. Now, as he prepares to take office, the challenges ahead are enormous. New York is a city of contradictions, wealth and poverty side by side, progress and pressure sharing the same skyline. But if there's one thing Zohran Mamdani has shown the world, it's that you don't need to be born into power to lead. You just need to care enough to try. His journey from Kampala to Queens to City Hall is a reminder that the American dream isn't about where you start. It's about what you stand for. It's about believing that fairness, compassion, and courage can still guide the most powerful city in the world. And maybe that's what makes his story so powerful, because it's not just about him. It's about all of us, and the belief that even in a world of broken promises, change is still possible. That's Zohran Mamdani, not a politician made by power, but by people. A son of immigrants, a believer in equality, a new kind of New Yorker, and the face of a city ready to believe again.